The massive crystal halls of Zentari Prime buzzed with hundreds of different voices as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for another council session. Ambassador Kim Ji-woo straightened his dark blue Earth uniform and checked his presentation materials one last time. Today was the day humanity would ask to join the Galactic Council as full members. Ji-woo walked through the enormous doors into the main chamber. The ceiling stretched so high above him it seemed to touch the clouds. Seats arranged in circular tiers held creatures of every shape and size imaginable. Some had multiple arms, others had scales that shimmered like jewels, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. He made his way to the small observer section where humans were allowed to sit. The chair felt tiny compared to the grand seats of the full council members. Ji-woo placed his datapad on the small table and waited for his turn to speak. Council Chairman Vex Thol called the session to order. His body looked like it was carved from blue-green crystal, and his voice echoed through the chamber like music played through glass. Today we hear from the humans of Earth, he announced. They wish to present their case for full membership. Ji-woo stood and walked to the center speaking area. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some seemed curious, others looked bored, and many appeared amused. He activated his holographic display and began his presentation. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Ji-woo said clearly. Humanity comes before you today to request full membership in this great organization. We have prepared extensive documentation of our technological achievements, our cultural development, and our desire to contribute to galactic peace. The first laugh came from somewhere in the upper tiers, then another. Soon, scattered chuckles rippled through the entire chamber. The Veltar delegate, a creature with 6 thin arms and silver skin, raised one hand to speak. Chairman, surely this is some kind of joke, she said, her voice sharp and cold. These creatures have barely left their homeworld. They are nothing more than evolved apes clinging to a single planet. More laughter filled the chamber. Ji-woo kept his face calm and professional, though his hands gripped the podium a little tighter. Admiral Zethkri of the Corvan Empire stood up from his seat. He was tall and covered in dark green scales, with yellow eyes that looked like those of a snake. Perhaps we should consider a different role for the humans, he said with a cruel smile. Their short lifespans and simple minds might make them useful as servants or laborers for the more advanced species. The laughter grew louder. Some delegates were pointing at Ji-woo and speaking to each other in their alien languages. He could not understand the words, but their tone made their meaning clear. Ji-woo cleared his throat and tried to continue. If you would review our scientific achievements, you will see that humanity has made remarkable progress in space travel, energy production, and space travel, interrupted the crystal-like being from Nexari. You have barely visited your own neighboring planets. We have been crossing the galaxy for thousands of years while your people were still living in caves. A delegate from the Zephyrian collective, who looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed different colors as it spoke. Their technology is primitive at best. They still use chemical rockets and metal ships. How could such backwards creatures possibly contribute to our advanced civilization? Chairman Vex Thol tapped his crystal hand on his desk, creating a musical sound that called for order. The council has heard the human request, he said, though his tone suggested he had already made up his mind. All those in favor of granting full membership to Earth? Not a single hand, tentacle, or appendage was raised. All those opposed? The chamber erupted in a forest of raised limbs. The vote was completely unanimous against humanity. The motion is denied, Chairman Vex Thol announced. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when the humans have evolved beyond their current primitive state, we might reconsider. The laughter started again, even louder than before. Ji-woo gathered his materials with steady hands, refusing to show any emotion on his face. He had expected this outcome, but experiencing it still felt like a sharp blow to his chest. As the council moved on to other business, Ji-woo made his way back through the crystal halls toward the exit. Captain Park Daeho, his military escort, fell into step beside him. The captain was young but experienced, with alert eyes that missed nothing. "How did the meeting go, sir?" Daeho asked quietly as they walked toward their transport ship. Jiwoo was quiet for a moment, listening to the fading sounds of alien laughter behind them. "Exactly as we predicted, Captain," he finally replied. "They see us as nothing more than primitive animals who got lucky enough to discover spaceflight." They reached their small Earth vessel, which looked plain and simple next to the elegant alien ships in the docking bay. As they prepared for departure, Jiwoo opened a secure communication channel to Earth. "Admiral Lee Minho, this is Ambassador Jiwoo," he spoke into the transmitter. "The Council has rejected our membership request. The vote was unanimous against us. Please inform headquarters that it is time to begin Phase 2 of our plan." Daeho looked curious but said nothing. He had learned not to ask too many questions about classified operations. As their ship lifted off from Centauri Prime, Jiwoo looked back at the beautiful crystal spires one last time. The Galactic Council had made their choice. They saw humanity as weak and primitive, unworthy of respect or consideration. Soon they would learn how wrong they were. 6 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at Centauri Prime. Across the galaxy, things were getting worse by the day. The Thrakari Empire, a brutal race of warriors with gray skin and razor-sharp teeth, had begun attacking peaceful worlds along the Outer Rim territories. Captain Yoon Minji stood on the bridge of her deep space exploration vessel, the ESV Horizon. Through the main viewing screen, she watched the beautiful blue-green planet of Kepler 186f being torn apart by Thrakari war machines. Massive metal ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, firing deadly beams that turned forests into ash and cities into rubble. The peaceful colonists below had no weapons to defend themselves. They were farmers and scientists who had come to this world to build a better life. Now they were being rounded up like animals and loaded onto Thrakari slave ships. "Captain, we are receiving distress signals from the surface," reported Lieutenant Kim Woobin from his communications station. His young face was pale with worry. "They are begging for help." Minji clenched her fists. Her ship was designed for exploration, not fighting. She had only a small crew and basic defensive weapons. Against the massive Thrakari fleet, they would be destroyed in minutes. "Send an emergency message to Galactic Council Fleet Command," she ordered. "Tell them we have a full-scale invasion in progress. Innocent civilians are being enslaved. We need immediate military assistance." Hours crawled by like days. Minji watched helplessly as more colonist ships were captured. Children were crying as they were separated from their parents. Elderly people collapsed from fear and exhaustion. The Thrakari soldiers showed no mercy to anyone. Finally, a response came from the Council Fleet Command. Lieutenant Kim read the message aloud, his voice filled with disbelief. "They say our request has been forwarded to the appropriate committees for review. Estimated response time is 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks? Minji shouted. "These people will be dead or enslaved by then." By the time she finished speaking, the last colonist ship had disappeared into a Thrakari cargo vessel. The planet below was burning, its surface scarred with ugly black marks where cities used to stand. The Thrakari fleet gathered their stolen people and resources, then jumped to hyperspace, leaving nothing but destruction behind. Minji stared at the empty space where thousands of innocent lives had been. She made a promise to herself that this would not be forgotten. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city of Seoul on Earth, Fleet Admiral Lee Minho stood before a room full of serious faces. The underground command center was filled with holographic displays showing star maps and fleet positions. Red markers indicated Thrakari attacks, and there were far too many of them. "The situation is getting worse every day," Admiral Lee explained to the United Earth Council. "In the past 6 months, the Thrakari have attacked 47 different worlds. The Galactic Council has responded to exactly 0 of these attacks." President Yang Hyun, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward in her chair. "Are they really that slow to respond, or is something else going on?" Dr. Cho Sunwoo, the head of Earth's Xenobiology Institute, stood up to answer. He was a thin man with thick glasses who spent most of his time studying alien behavior patterns. "Madam President, our analysis suggests the Council's inaction is not accidental. They are deliberately allowing the Thrakari to eliminate civilizations they see as potential threats." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Dr. Cho continued his explanation. Our research shows that humanity possesses something unique in the galaxy. We call it adaptive intelligence. While other species developed in stable environments, humans survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and countless other disasters. This made us incredibly flexible in how we think and solve problems. And they see this as a threat? Asked Defense Minister Park Hyojin. Absolutely, Dr. Cho replied. Most alien species think in very predictable patterns. Humans do not. We can change our strategies quickly, learn from our mistakes, and find solutions that others never consider. This terrifies them. Admiral Lee activated a new holographic display showing secret hyperspace routes that human exploration ships had discovered. The Council thinks they know everything about space travel, but our deep space surveys have found paths through hyperspace that their maps do not show. We can move through the galaxy without being detected. President Yang studied the star charts carefully. What are you suggesting, Admiral? We act alone, Lee said firmly. We cannot rely on the Council to protect innocent people. If they want to play political games while civilizations burn, then humanity will step up and do what needs to be done. The room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone knew this decision would change everything. If they acted without Council approval, there would be serious consequences. But if they did nothing, more innocent people would suffer and die. General Nam Tai-hyun, head of Earth's ground forces, spoke up. Our soldiers are ready, sir. They have been training for this possibility since the Council rejected our membership. Admiral. Lee nodded. We have advantages they do not expect. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable than they realize. Our weapons are more advanced than they believe. Most importantly, our tactics are completely unpredictable to them. President Yang looked around the room at each of her advisors. Then she made the decision that would echo across the galaxy. Do it, she said simply. Begin operations immediately. It is time to show the universe what humanity is truly capable of. The age of waiting was over. The age of action had begun. The space around Kepler 442b looked empty and peaceful when the Thrakari garrison commander checked his sensors that morning. The gray-skinned warrior scratched his sharp teeth with one clawed finger as he reviewed the daily reports. Everything seemed normal on the planet below, where thousands of enslaved colonists worked in the mining camps. Suddenly, his sensor operator's eyes went wide with shock. Commander, we have multiple contacts appearing from hyperspace. Before the commander could respond, human ships materialized around the planet like ghosts becoming solid. The ESV Phoenix led the attack fleet, with Commander Song Ji-young standing calmly on the bridge as chaos erupted around the Thrakari positions. All ships begin Phase 1, Ji-young ordered into her communication device. Her voice was steady and confident, like someone who had planned every detail of this moment. Target their communication arrays first. We want them confused before we destroy them. Lieutenant Hwang Junho, her tactical officer, almost smiled as he worked at his control station. Broadcasting their own propaganda back to them now, Commander. But I have scrambled it with fake orders and contradictory commands. The Thrakari fleet tried to organize a defense, but their communication systems were filled with voices of their own commanders giving impossible orders. Some ships were told to attack their own allies. Others received commands to retreat and advance at the same time. The rigid military structure that normally made them so effective became their weakness. What is happening? The Thrakari commander roared at his communication officer. Why are our own people telling us to surrender? Down on the planet's surface, Major Kim Sora led her marine forces through the dense jungle toward the main slave camp. Her soldiers moved like shadows, using the thick trees and rocky hills to stay hidden from Thrakari patrols. Remember, she whispered to her troops through their helmet radios. These creatures think in straight lines. They expect us to attack from the front with overwhelming force. Instead, we hit them from 6 different directions at once. The Thrakari guards had been trained to fight other alien species who used predictable battle tactics. When the human attacks began, nothing made sense to them. Explosions came from behind their own defensive lines. Their supply convoys were destroyed by enemies who seemed to appear from nowhere, and vanished just as quickly. "They are not fighting like any species we have encountered," one Thrakari field captain reported desperately to his superiors. "They seem to know what we will do before we do it." Commander Ji-young watched the battle unfold from her ship's bridge. The Thrakari were trying to use their standard defensive formation, but human ships attacked from angles they had never considered. Her vessels moved in patterns that looked random but were actually carefully planned to confuse the enemy. "Their clan-based command structure is breaking down," reported her intelligence officer, Ensign Lee Jamin. "Each Thrakari unit is trying to follow traditional battle procedures, but our psychological warfare is making them doubt their own orders." The battle lasted exactly 3 days, just as the human commanders had predicted. By the end, every Thrakari ship was either destroyed or fleeing into hyperspace. The mining camps were liberated, and the enslaved colonists were free once again. But when Thrakari reinforcements arrived a week later, they found empty space. The human fleet had vanished completely, leaving behind only the freed prisoners and a strange message broadcasting on all frequencies. It was a recording of Ambassador Kim Ji-woo's original speech to the Galactic Council, the one where he had asked for humanity to be treated as equals. News of the liberation spread quickly through underground communication networks that connected oppressed worlds across the galaxy. Within a month, 17 more planets had been freed from Thrakari control using the same mysterious tactics. Each time, human forces appeared without warning, defeated the occupying army, and disappeared before anyone could track them. Admiral Zethkri of the Corvan Empire sat in his command center reading intelligence reports with growing confusion and fear. His scaled hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the data from the latest human attack. "How are they moving so fast?" he demanded, from his staff officers. "Our sensor networks show no large fleet movements. Our spies report no unusual activity in human space. Yet somehow they are fighting battles on worlds that are weeks apart by conventional hyperspace travel." His intelligence chief, a thin officer with nervous yellow eyes, cleared his throat before answering. "Sir, we believe they are using hyperspace, routes that are not on any of our star charts. Our scientists say this should be impossible, but the evidence is clear." The Thrakari Emperor himself called an emergency meeting with the Galactic Council, demanding immediate action against the human attacks. "These creatures are disrupting our expansion plans," he snarled, showing his sharp teeth. "They must be stopped before they interfere with more of our operations." But when Council surveillance ships arrived at the battle sites, they found only the aftermath. Destroyed Thrakari equipment lay scattered across the planets like broken toys. The freed populations had built new defensive structures that seemed designed to resist every type of conventional attack the Council could imagine. Most disturbing of all were the tactical innovations the humans had used. Their battle strategies defied everything the galaxy's military experts thought they knew about warfare. It was as if the humans could see 3 steps ahead of every possible enemy response. "They are not just fighting a war," one Council military analyst reported with barely concealed fear. "They are conducting a symphony of destruction that we cannot understand or predict." The galaxy was beginning to realize that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The fortress world of Zerion 7 was supposed to be impossible to attack. The Thrakari had spent 3 years turning the planet into their strongest military base, with massive shield generators, orbital defense platforms, and an army of 50,000 elite soldiers. Their engineers bragged that it would take any enemy at least 6 months to break through their defenses. Captain Bei Taejun proved them wrong in 18 hours. His battle fleet emerged from hyperspace at dawn, but not where the Thrakari expected. Instead of appearing in front of the planet where the heaviest defenses waited, human ships materialized behind the 2 moons, using their gravity shadows to hide from sensors. "All units, this is Phoenix Leader." Taejun spoke calmly into his communication device. "Begin the dance." What happened next looked like chaos to the Thrakari defenders, but it was actually a carefully planned performance. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed random and confused, but each movement was designed to trigger specific responses from the enemy. Field Marshal Grak Thul, the Thrakari commander, watched his tactical display with growing panic. "They are not following any known attack pattern, he growled to his staff officers. Every time we move to counter their assault, they have already shifted to a different strategy. Down on the planet's surface, Colonel Nam Yunji led the ground invasion with surgical precision. Her Marines didn't charge forward in massive waves like other alien armies would do. Instead, they moved in small groups that struck key targets with perfect timing. "Remember, people," she whispered to her troops through secure radio channels, "we are not here to overwhelm them with numbers. We are here to make them defeat themselves." The Thrakari had prepared for every type of conventional assault they could imagine. Their bunkers were positioned to stop frontal attacks. Their artillery was aimed at the most logical landing zones. Their reserve troops were positioned to respond to traditional military tactics. But the humans did none of these things. They attacked water treatment facilities instead of military bases. They disabled power generators instead of engaging weapon systems. They captured communication centers instead of destroying them, then used those centers to send false orders to Thrakari units across the planet. "Sir, our own command network is telling our eastern divisions to retreat while ordering our western forces to advance into the same territory," reported a confused Thrakari communication officer. "Our soldiers do not know which orders to follow." What terrified the defenders most was that the humans seemed to predict every move before it happened. When Thrakari reinforcements tried to reach a critical battle zone, they found human forces already waiting in ambush. When the enemy attempted to call for orbital support, their targeting computers had been quietly sabotaged hours earlier. Lieutenant Park Minha, leading a special operations team, demonstrated this perfectly when she captured the main command bunker. While Thrakari soldiers were focused on defending against an obvious attack from the north, her team appeared inside their stronghold through maintenance tunnels that the enemy had forgotten existed. "How did they know about those passages?" Marshal Grakthul demanded as human soldiers surrounded his command post. "Those tunnels are not on any blueprints we shared with other species." Colonel Nam smiled as she accepted his surrender. "We have been studying this facility since the day you started building it. Our intelligence officers are very thorough." The truth was even more impressive than she let on. Human spy satellites had watched every stage of construction using sensors that could see through solid rock. Computer systems had analyzed every decision the Thrakari engineers made, predicting exactly how they would design their defenses. By the time the battle began, human forces knew the fortress better than the people who built it. News of Zerion 7's fall reached the Galactic Council within hours. Admiral Zethkri stood before the emergency assembly with his scaled hands shaking as he read the military reports aloud. 47 successful human operations in 6 months, he announced to the shocked delegates. 0 human casualties in their last 12 engagements. They are not just winning battles, they are making warfare itself look like an art form. The Veltar delegate who had laughed at humanity 6 months earlier now sat quietly in her chair, afraid to speak. The intelligence reports spread across her desk showed human innovations that seemed to break the laws of physics. Ships that moved faster than their engines should allow. Weapons that struck targets they should not be able to. See? Battle tactics that anticipated enemy responses with impossible accuracy. "How is this possible?" whispered the crystal-like being from Nexari. "Our greatest military minds have studied these battles for months. We cannot understand how they are achieving these results." Chairman Vextel studied the holographic battle displays with growing fear. The humans had not just been underestimated, they had been completely misunderstood. What the Council had dismissed as primitive creatures were actually the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Prepare a diplomatic message," he ordered his staff with a voice that barely concealed his terror. "Address it directly to Ambassador Kim Ji-woo of Earth. Tell him the Galactic Council wishes to discuss terms for immediate membership." Intelligence Director Han Yejin, reading from her classified reports, added the final piece of information that changed everything. "Sir, our analysis indicates these operations are not being conducted by their entire military. Based on ship configurations and troop movements, we estimate humanity is using less than 5% of their total forces." The chamber fell completely silent. If this was what humans could do with a tiny fraction of their power, what would happen if they decided to use their full strength? For the first time in galactic history, the Council was afraid. The same crystal halls where humanity had been laughed at 6 months earlier now fell silent as Ambassador Kim Ji-woo entered the Galactic Council chambers. Every single delegate rose from their seats as he walked past, their alien faces showing, expressions of respect and barely hidden fear. Gone was the mocking laughter. Gone were the condescending smiles. The beings who had once called humans primitive apes now watched Ji-woo's every movement with careful attention, as if studying a dangerous predator. Admiral Lee Minho's entire fleet waited just outside the SWR, Centauri Prime system, their ships visible on every sensor screen in the galaxy. They were not hiding. They were not threatening. They were simply there, a quiet reminder of the power that had humbled the mighty Thrakari Empire in a matter of weeks. Chairman Vex Thul's crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights as he stood to address the assembly. His voice, once filled with casual dismissal, now carried the tone of someone who had learned a hard lesson about underestimating others. Ambassador Ji-woo, he began formally, the Galactic Council hereby unanimously approves Earth's application for full membership. With all privileges and responsibilities therein, the vote was taken immediately. Not a single hand, tentacle, or appendage was raised in opposition. The same council that had rejected humanity with complete unanimity now accepted them with equal unanimity. Ji-woo walked to the center speaking, area where he had been humiliated months before. This time the podium seemed smaller, less intimidating. He activated his holographic display and began his presentation with the same calm professionalism he had shown during humanity's darkest moment. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he said clearly, humanity is pleased to accept full membership. We also wish to present our proposal for the Galactic Defense Initiative. The proposal was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of the Council's slow committee-based response system, the Defense Initiative would create rapid response forces capable of stopping aggressive actions within days rather than months. Small mobile fleets would patrol key regions, ready to intervene the moment innocent civilizations came under attack. Admiral Zethkri, the same Corvan warrior who had suggested humans serve as laborers, now stood to address Ji-woo with obvious respect. Ambassador, the Corvan Empire would be honored to contribute ships and personnel to this defense initiative. We would also like to formally request a military alliance with Earth. The irony was not lost on anyone in the chamber. The species that had dismissed humanity as unworthy now competed with each other to gain human favor and protection. The Veltar delegate, her 6 arms trembling slightly, offered to share her people's most advanced technologies in exchange for human tactical training. We realize now that we have much to learn from your military strategies, she admitted quietly. Dr. Cho Sun-woo, observing the proceedings from Earth's new seat at the high table, made notes about the remarkable transformation he was witnessing. The same psychological adaptability that had made humans successful survivors on Earth was now reshaping galactic politics. Fear had accomplished what months of diplomacy could not. Captain Park Dae-ho, still serving as Ji-woo's security escort, watched the proceedings with professional alertness. He had been present during humanity's rejection, and now witnessed their elevation to galactic leadership. The speed of the change impressed even him. The Defense Initiative proposal is approved by unanimous consent, Chairman Vex Thul announced, after barely 5 minutes of discussion. Ambassador Ji-woo, please take your place at the high table as Earth's permanent representative. As Ji-woo walked to the elevated platform where only the most powerful civilizations were allowed to sit, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought humanity to this moment. They had never sought to conquer or dominate other species. They had simply wanted to be treated as equals, to have their voices heard in the great conversations that shaped galactic civilization. The Council had forced them to prove their worth through strength, instead of allowing them to contribute through wisdom. The result was a demonstration of power that had shocked the galaxy into a new understanding of what humanity represented. Captain Yoon Minji, monitoring the proceedings from her ship in deep space, smiled as she watched the ceremony on her communication screen. The same council that had ignored her desperate pleas for help during the Kepler 186F massacre now hung on every word spoken by human representatives. "Commander," her communication officer reported, "we are receiving cooperation requests from 17 different species. They want human assistance with their own security problems." The transformation was complete. In 6 months, humanity had gone from being dismissed as insignificant to being recognized as the galaxy's newest great power. The same adaptability that had helped humans survive ice ages and asteroid impacts had now made them masters of interstellar warfare. General Nam Tae-hyun, commanding Earth's ground forces from his headquarters in Seoul, received the news with quiet satisfaction. His soldiers had proven that human tactics could defeat any enemy, but more importantly, they had shown that humanity's true strength lay in their ability to think differently than anyone else. As the council session ended and delegates began approaching Jiwoo to discuss various cooperation agreements, Captain Daeho leaned close to ask a question that had been bothering him for months. "Sir, how does it feel to finally have the respect we always deserved?" Jiwoo looked around the chamber at the alien beings who now treated him as an equal, and smiled quietly. "Like we finally proved what we always knew, Captain. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have." The age of dismissing humanity had ended forever. The age of galactic cooperation under human leadership had begun.